With the RAF now desperately short of men after the Battle of Britain, the Air Force gave in to pressure from the Colonial Office and started seriously recruiting, mostly for ground crew, in the Caribbean colonies. Young Caribbeans joined for a variety of reasons. Some did so out of patriotism, which was stoked by British officers going into all the little corners of Jamaica, literally begging you to come and fight for England, according to Jamaican Connie Mark. Some took the threat posed by fascism very seriously. Edwin Martin Noble of Jamaica recalled, "I had made up my mind that no self-respecting, able-bodied young man could remain at home when the fate of the world was literally at stake in Europe." The mixed motivations remembered by Trinidadian Ulrich Cross were perhaps more typical. "I was young, adventurous, idealistic. The whole idea of being a member of the Royal Air Force was romantic. Most of my friends thought I was mad. I thought I was doing the right thing in trying to stop Hitler. I never felt I was going to the aid of the mother country. Some people did, but the majority of us didn't." Some volunteers wished to exchange the poverty and unemployment of the Caribbean for a secure wage, better economic prospects, and wider horizons. Cy Grant, from British Guyana, recalled, "I felt frustrated with the colonial way of life. I knew that the colony was too small to hold me." Once he became more familiar with Britain's imperial system, Grant found his motivation for participating in the war shifting. He said, "My ambition was to help get the British out of the West Indies." Some recruits were very clear about what the fate of the Caribbean might have been if the British had lost the war. When pressed on how she came to serve an empire which oppressed people of colour, Lillian Bader, Women's Auxiliary Air Force, later said, "We black people would have ended up in the ovens. British patriotism felt in the Caribbean was profound and not just among those who volunteered. £20,000 was raised in the first 10 days alone of a press campaign in Jamaica in 1941 to pay for 12 bombers, a huge and impressive sum at the time from a poor island. In gratitude, Churchill officially designated RAF Squadron 139 as Jamaica Squadron, a distinction it still carries to this day. Over 400 people of colour, many from the Caribbean, are estimated to have served as aircrew in the RAF during the Second World War. Some, like Ulrich Cross and John Blair, gained commissions, both of whom were awarded Distinguished Service Order medals for their brave conduct. Johnny Smythe, from Sierra Leone, was shot down in a bombing raid over Germany. He recalled, "We were flying at 16,000 feet when the fighters came out of nowhere. They wrecked the fuselage and there were flames everywhere. I was hit by shrapnel. We all parachuted and I landed among some trees." Smythe took shelter, but when I walked out of the barn, pandemonium broke out. The Germans couldn't believe their eyes. They were shocked to see a black man, but when they realised I was also an officer, they flatly refused to believe their eyes. Another RAF captive, Cy Grant's photograph, was featured in Volkischer Beobachter, a Nazi newspaper, with the caption, "A member of the RAF of indeterminate race." It was intended to highlight how Nazi Germany defended racial purity compared to degenerate Britain. War encouraged strong friendships between men of different backgrounds, particularly among multinational RAF bomber crews, 44% of whom perished. White Englishman Andrew Cole asked Errol Barrow from Barbados to fly with him. "We agreed to put our lives in each other's hands," he said, and became friends for life. Air Gunners Sergeant J.C. Dickinson, Royal Canadian Air Force, and Sergeant Leslie Gilkes, 9 Squadron, are seen here chatting in 1943. Sergeant Dickinson survived the war, but Trinidadian Sergeant Gilkes was shot down and killed on 3rd of August 1943, having no known grave. Despite this comradely equality, Caribbean aircrew were usually prevented from rising to the rank of pilot on the racist assumption that white crew members would not obey them. In September 1943, advertisements in Jamaica's The Daily Gleaner newspaper announced, "Recruitment for RAF begins today." It called for male volunteers between the ages of 18 and 32 to sign up. Similar advertisements appeared in other colonies. In June and November 1944 and in March 1945, contingents of Caribbean recruits arrived in Britain to an official welcome and hot drinks from the ladies of the WRVS. They were sent for basic training to RAF Hunmanby Moor, an ex-Butlins holiday camp at Filey in Yorkshire. They were treated well and welcomed by local people, most of whom had never seen a black person before, but recognised in these men volunteers who had come to fight for Britain, far away from home. Some struggled with the cold weather and a diet that included the unfamiliar roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, and overcooked potatoes and cabbage. A Caribbean veteran later referred to all these black men, white men, Chinese, all these different colours, different shades of people, different nationalities, all talking the same way, and we all got on so well. Jamaicans, Trinidadians, Barbadians, Guyanese, we were all one. The Colonial Office employed welfare officers towards the end of the war, many of them ex-flyers such as Johnny Smythe and Billy Strachan, to look after the interests of the recruits, smoothing relations with the Air Force. Mostly shielded from prejudice by these officers, as well as by service regulations, conditions were improved. One of the recruits to arrive in November 1944 was teenager Prince Albert Jake Jacob from Trinidad, a local RAF veteran. While the RAF proudly boasted in official propaganda that no colour bar existed to recruitment, it internally debated the restoration of one as soon as the war was over. In response, the Air Secretary argued that to erect a colour bar against an officer who had earned a DFC would be indefensible and barbaric. In all, it is estimated that 6,000 Caribbeans were recruited to the RAF during the Second World War, most serving as ground crew. But what lay ahead for the survivors in post-war Britain?